I just had a great catch-up conversation with a student of mine who's taking a year off to try to get as good at tennis as possible. A year off from like her job, her career. She's working really hard. And I asked her what the most surprising thing was that she's learned in the last couple months. And she said she's been surprised to find out that winning a tennis match is in and of itself kind of a separate skill. And I just had to share this because I feel like so many tennis players fall into this trap of thinking that if they just practice their forehand a million times and they practice their serve a million times and they make it look as good as possible and they feel like they're aesthetically like doing it right, then they're just magically going to win matches. And I'm sorry, but that's wrong. And it leads to so much frustration and so much confusion and so much, frankly, like condescension and like bullying in tennis when people win lots of matches, but they don't do it right. Unfortunately, the culture in tennis is one of being condescending and like less than kind of attitude. Like, oh, that's not real tennis. And if they just knew how to hit the ball right, then I could beat them. And that's such bullcrap. That's such a terrible attitude. If you lose, then you are worse to that person. You are worse than that person. I'm going to repeat that. If you lose to a tennis player, you are worse than that person. At least in that whatever, hour and a half, 2 hour like time span on planet Earth, during that period of time, you were worse than them. I'm not saying you're a worse human than them. I'm not saying like you're a worse person than they are. I'm not even necessarily saying that big picture you're a worse tennis player than they are. But in that span of time, that 2 sets that you played or 3 sets that you played, if they won more points, then they were better than you. So put aside any kind of aesthetic like preference, put aside any belief that if I can do it right, then I'll win points. And if I'll win points, then I'll win matches. There isn't that one-to-one correlation. Think about tennis swings. Think about them as being like tools in your toolbox, but you have to know how to use the tools come match day. So it's one thing to be able to perform the technique, but just because you can perform the technique doesn't mean in a vacuum, like against a ball machine or against a coach or against a practice partner or against a wall or whatever, does not mean that when all the chips are on the table and all the pressure is on and everybody's watching and it really matters, that you have the mental, the psychological fortitude, and the training under pressure to use that tool to the best of its ability. Like think about I don't know, like a car mechanic. If you gave me a wrench, like the same wrench that a car mechanic has in his literal toolbox, that he's able to fix tremendous problems with vehicles and create a huge amount of value. Car rolls in that doesn't work and then it rolls out and it works because of the wrench he's holding in his hand. I don't have that same ability, even though I might be holding the same tool in my hand. I don't have the same understanding of how to utilize that tool. I could like put it on a bolt and like turn the bolt, but I can't use it to its full extent because I haven't trained how to do that when it really matters. It's the same thing, honestly, with hitting a forehand. You can practice for years and years trying to hit a perfect like Roger Federer forehand or whoever your favorite player is. It does not mean that you're going to win matches. Just because you can make it look pretty under certain circumstances in a certain environment doesn't mean you can just shift over to the real world where somebody's trying to make you uncomfortable. It might not even apply at all. Like if you spend years and years developing a Federer forehand against a 40-mile-an-hour ball coming out of a ball machine at waist height, and then you go play a match against somebody who doesn't give you one ball like that, that's not their problem. That's not their fault. That's just good tactics. That's your fault. If you never trained your Federer forehand in any other environment than a 40-mile-an-hour forehand at waist height, and then you go play a match and they give you everything but a 40-mile-an-hour forehand at waist height, that's your fault. It's not their fault. They're supposed to do that. They're supposed to try to figure out what makes you uncomfortable. That's what trying to win at sports, that's what competition is all about. You're trying to disrupt my flow, I'm trying to disrupt your flow, and then we'll find out like what shakes out and like who's standing at the end of it. And to think at all that because somebody doesn't do it the way that you prefer, and they don't feed you the type of ball that you want, that somehow they're inferior. Oh my gosh. What man, the ego and the lack of like understanding of what we're even doing here is pretty mind-blowing. So when my student said, I'm learning that winning is like its own skill, man, I felt like she just really hit a nail on the head there. It's a critical one. It's a message I think more tennis players need to hear more often. They need to absorb and take to heart, and then go out and practice the skill. And by the way, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that developing quality technique is a waste of time. But once you've developed it, that's like step one. And now you need to move on to utilizing it and expressing it under pressure and under less than ideal circumstances. That's a whole other developmental project that has to be addressed, that has to be tackled. It's not just good enough to do it one time in one way, in one environment, under one level of pressure and stress, and then feel like you're a good tennis player. It's just an unbelievably bad attitude, an incorrect one. So just spend some time thinking about that. Maybe forward this video to somebody who you feel like needs an attitude adjustment in that area. And it's a topic I need to come back around to and talk about more, because that that condescension is so common in tennis. That kind of elitist like attitude of like, and just purely based on aesthetics. And there's so much over focus on technique just for technique's sake. And yeah, somebody needs to talk more about the other side of the coin. So thanks to my student for bringing that up today. Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.